The life of an England rugby fan. It's all been going great this year, hasn't it? England looked like they'd turned a corner. What a victory against Ireland in the Six Nations. They push France close away from home and they almost win a test or a couple of tests in New Zealand. They had turned a corner and then this happened. This was the bombshell news yesterday. It's not often that an assistant coach or a defence coach would be such big news in rugby union, but this is for England. Felix Jones, and this came from the Times, great scoop by Peter O'Reilly, has quit the England setup. He has left Steve Borthwick's coaching ticket. What next for him? What next for England? And just how disappointing is this for England fans? You can have your say in the comment. I'm going to have mine. I think it is massively, massively disappointing. But welcome back to the channel. My name's Alfie. And on a Sunday morning, I did not want to be talking about this. So Felix Jones has left, apparently. RFU haven't commented, Jones hasn't commented, but that is the news. He has left the England setup. And you've got to remember here, this is the guy who was part of the South Africa coaching team that helped lead them to back-to-back World Cups. One of the most highly rated and highly thought of defence coaches in the game at the moment. It was a great scoop for England to be able to get him in the first place. And importantly, we had really started to see the effectiveness of the blitz defence that he was implementing. There were some teething problems there. You'll remember the Scotland game in the Six Nations at Murrayfield, where England left some opportunities and were exploited. But certainly against Ireland, against France, against all those matches that I've just mentioned, we'd started to see a real improvement from England. Their defence had started to improve and their whole game had started to improve. And given that this was an England team that since making the World Cup final in 2019 had hardly produced any rugby of note. I know they got to the semi-finals and ended up finishing third at last year's World Cup, but the style of play wasn't that great, even though they got themselves to that point in the competition. And there was a real positivity for the first time in 4 or 5 years that England were playing good rugby, they were playing attacking rugby, they had an effective, aggressive defence, and that they had turned a corner. They were now able and capable of competing with the best teams in the world, even if they didn't always beat them. They were moving in the right direction. And I think that's what makes this so unsettling and so disappointing from an England point of view and an England fan's point of view, because it's kind of like the guy that has come in and is really highly thought of and has had a good impact has left. What next? And it also, I think, comes at a time where we've seen Aled Walters, another coach, the head of S&C, he's also left the setup. He's also someone else who is very, very highly thought of in the world of strength and conditioning. He's left. Kevin Sinfield was going to leave and has had multiple different positions within the setup and has been bounced around a little bit. And then we've seen Felix Jones now leave as well. And the reason apparently for this is quoted in the Times, an unstable working environment, whatever that means. But it paints a picture of a setup that isn't as secure as maybe we thought and maybe you would hope. And you start to worry really about what this looks like. And the big questions for me really off the back of this is, how much is this to do with Steve Borthwick, the England head coach, how he operates his system, how he runs the team and all that sort of thing? Or how much of it is to do with other factors? How much of it is not necessarily related to Borthwick, but just other things within the setup, whether it have been other coaches leaving, for example, Walters and Sinfield, whether it's to do with the RFU and the access you get to players with England and wanting more time with them to be able to implement your views. We don't know exactly on this. The suggestion at the moment that I've got anyway is that it is a bit of an indictment on the way Borthwick runs the team. Don't know if that's true or not, but I think for me anyway, this is the biggest question mark of the Borthwick era so far in terms of his overall management style. We know he is not the most charismatic with the press. We know he is not the most comfortable sat at a press conference in front of a room of journalists or on TV interviews or podcasts or whatever it might be. And that's absolutely fine. That's not everyone's strength. It's not what a lot of people enjoy doing. We do know he is a very, very good coach. But this is bigger than that because it questions his management style and the whole environment around his team, essentially. That, for me, is the biggest question to come out of this. And so it is a huge setback for England because they'd finally turned a corner. He was the key to the defence. And what now? What now for England? I mean, they've got a bit of time, haven't they, to plan. The new season starts soon in terms of the club game. In terms of the international game, it's not until November that we get to that international window. So England have time to now adjust and plan for this, but how much is it going to set them back based upon what they have already done? What do England look like now in November when we get there? How similar will it be as a continuation from what we've seen most recently in New Zealand? Or are they kind of stepping back and having to start a little bit from scratch again? Those are kind of the big questions in terms of England's performance and why I think it is a big concern, certainly for me as an England fan, and I'd imagine for a lot of England fans watching this, that is the worry. We'd finally got to a point where they were playing good stuff, and I just worry that they're going to go backwards a bit. Final thing for this video, and remember to have your say in the comments, and also if you've got this far, like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Would love it if you hit subscribe. But what next for Felix Jones? I mentioned it. He is, it's not an exaggeration to say he is one of the most highly regarded coaches in the world. He will have his pick of jobs at club or at international level. British and Irish Lions tour, as Andy Farrell looks to get his coaching ticket together for the tour to Australia. Could easily see him ending up on that. What a great appointment he would be for that tour, by the way. Or possibly into the Ireland setup. A return to Ireland. You've got to remember that Farrell will be away for that British and Irish Lions tour, so they'll kind of have a little bit of a rejig in the coaching team for that period anyway. And also, if some of his frustrations are with the England setup, the Irish setup in terms of central contracts, access to players, that sort of thing is one of the best in the world. And from a coach's point of view, I'd imagine would be a bit of a dream. So possibly being on that Ireland coaching ticket could be a great thing as well. And I also just wonder whether it's the sort of appointment, if we look at Ireland and we look at everything that team has achieved, world number one, Grand Slam titles, victories in South Africa, in New Zealand, and the World Cup being the one thing that I think certainly unfairly from the last World Cup gets thrown at them. He's the sort of coaching appointment that I think could make a real difference and could be a point of difference if we're talking about Ireland going further in a World Cup, winning a World Cup, maybe. We'll wait and see. But I think going to the Ireland setup would make a lot of sense. I also think British and Irish Lions tour, there's a good chance we see him on that as well. But let me know, where do you think? Where do you think he'll end up? Where do you think he should end up? And what next for England? How big of a concern for you is this? Honestly, when I saw that news yesterday, it was a bit of a like, no way, like this is terrible, terrible news, which I would never normally think about one of the assistant coaches, or I know he was second in command, so he was really important in the setup, but it wouldn't necessarily normally be your reaction. You'd kind of be like, oh, well, that's a shame. Let's see who they appoint. But I just think because of the impact he's had, I do think it is a massive, massive blow for England. So put your comments down below, like the video and subscribe to the channel whilst you're here as well, and I'll see you in the next one.